Hey everyone, welcome to another episode. We are spending this month diving into the topic of adding value. Adding value because we know, and we spent time talking about it last week, we know that when we add value, we become an asset to the organization. Many times we become an irreplaceable asset that gives us career security and also allows us to have the impact that we want to have on the business, right? It's a win-win because then we achieve that professional success that we all want to achieve, right? So today, let's spend a little time talking about one of the key drivers that prevent a lot of executives in particular, prevent a lot of executives from adding value to the level that they should or could, and that ultimately could derail an executive career if you're not careful. And what I'm talking about today is fear. Fear is the number one driver of ultimate career failure in this corporate space, right? So we all fear failure, and yet that fear is actually what generates failure. I know it sounds crazy, but let's walk through it a little bit. You've probably heard me talk about this. I'm going to keep beating this drum because it matters. If I can anchor in this thought process that you've got to add value, and the way in which you do it is not to hang on to the fears, not to convince yourself of things that aren't true, then you will ultimately add the value at the level that you need to, and your career will be safe. Okay. That's what I want for you. So let's go ahead and go through this a little bit. So what am I talking about with fear? Well, let's again talk about it at the executive level. We talk about it all the time that it takes a new first year executive, if they're learning it on their own, right? If they're learning the executive strategies and the way to deliver an executive presence and the way to show up and lead as a new executive, if they're doing all of this on their own, then it typically takes 12 months. That's a long time. That's a big growth curve. And so what happens is we step into the role and we're like, oh crap, what have I done? Okay. I gotta learn, right? That's what we start saying to ourselves. I gotta learn how to do this. I can do this. I can do this. I just gotta figure it out. But I can do it. Okay. All right, I can do this. But while I'm learning, I gotta be doing something, right? Like I gotta be doing something that the company wants me to do. I gotta be doing something that I feel like I'm good at because, I've never been in this position before. I've always sort of known what to do. Now I don't know what to do, or I'm starting to figure out what to do, but I'm not really good at it yet. And so, what do I do? It's probably the dialogue to some varying degree, right? That new executives are having in their heads. I had that conversation. You probably have had or are having that conversation in your head. So then what happens the majority of the time? It's this negotiation within ourselves, right? The conversation goes something like, I know I need to be over here doing this. And whatever this is performing at the executive level, right? Whatever that is, it's executive level performance. And we say, I know I need to be over here performing at the executive level, but I'm learning how to do that. And so what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to go and I'm going to fall back on what I've always done to help me be successful, which is being a doer, or it's analyzing data, or it's whatever it is. Okay. Everybody has their thing that makes them feel valuable and feel safe. But that's the key point that you've got to tease out in this moment. The difference between feeling valuable and being valuable. They're two totally different things if you're not careful. Okay. Sometimes they align. And when they do, that's awesome. And you've got to make sure that they do align. Okay. If they don't align, where do you go? Well, you don't go with the one that makes you feel valuable. You go with the one that actually is valued by the organization. But where a lot of people screw up, right, wrong, or indifferent, is the simple fact that they choose the one that makes them feel valuable. Now, I'm not trying to be a jerk, but I'm going to keep it real because that's who I am. It doesn't matter how you feel in this instance. You're not going to feel safe. You're not going to feel valuable because you're growing, you're learning. It's naturally uncomfortable. To feel uncomfortable in the growth is more normal than feeling comfortable. We have to embrace the discomfort. The desire to step in and feel comfortable is what's going to cause us to fail. Because at the end of the day, if we're not doing what the company values, then what did we say last week? If we're doing something that the company doesn't value, then the company doesn't have use for us. It's going to give us a little bit of grace. It's going to give us a little bit of learning curve. We're going to have time to figure it out. But if we don't figure it out effectively, or if we spend the bulk of our time doing things that the company doesn't value, we're not going to have a role for very long. This is really, really important. So last week I asked you to look, and I asked you to ask yourself, hey, am I adding value? It's a gut check. How am I doing? And either you came back and you said, I'm doing great. I just want to raise the bar. Or you said, man, I'm not doing great at all. I've got to figure this out. This is the first place you must start. Okay? And I don't use that word must lightly. If you want to raise the bar in your performance and add value, or if you want to start adding value, my challenge to you is, again, it's another gut check. What are you spending your time on? Ask yourself the question. Differentiate every action that you're doing, right? Is it what the company values, or is it what makes me feel valuable? If the answer is yes to both, that's a huge win, okay? Because then we get something internally out of it, right? And the company gets something out of it. It's mutually beneficial. But when in doubt, if it's not, then we must go with what adds value to the organization, okay? Now, really quickly, because I'm going to get this question, because I usually do. Katrina, if adding value to the organization doesn't make me feel valuable and that matters to me, how do I reconcile that? Well, the short answer really quickly, and I don't want to spend too much time on it, is either you start to get comfortable in adding value in which the way the company asks you to add value, okay? And that's usually what happens. It just happens through growth, right? We're a little uncomfortable, but we grow through it. We learn the skill sets. We learn the leadership skills, the strategies, the key things that we need to do. And we feel really good. We get back to our old selves of high achieving and high performing. And that feels naturally good. And so we're good. In other words, we grow through it. However, sometimes that doesn't happen. Sometimes we find ourselves very dissatisfied with the ways in which we're being asked to add value. It just doesn't fit who we are at our core. And if that's the answer, then what I would tell you is you're either in the wrong role or you're in the wrong organization. And so you've got to make a change. Okay? In the first instance, you're making the internal change because you just got to grow through it. In the second instance, you may have grown through it, but you're still dissatisfied. And that's where you've got to make an external change, right? You've got to change roles. You've got to change organizations. So that's the short answer to that. I am challenging you right now. Gut check. Is it adding value to the organization, or is it making you feel valuable? It's got to always add value to the organization. Make sure that's what's happening in your world. I look forward to connecting with you next week. We're going to tackle the next topic. As always, go and be legendary.